everybody? Welcome back to the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling. Been a minute, but we are catching up with the New Japan Pro Wrestling's New Japan Cup 2025 edition, which has been going on since March the 8th and will be concluding and coming up on March the 20th. This tournament this year, I think, is probably one of my favorite New Japan Cups of recent years, and I'm going to get to the reasons why as we continue this update and review and preview for the finals, which again are coming up on March the 20th. If you are enjoying videos like this and you do appreciate videos about New Japan Pro Wrestling, please hit that like button, subscribe button, and the notification bell. Be sure to share this video wherever you find people talk about pro wrestling in New Japan, for people who are interested in New Japan, want to know about New Japan, or just want to discuss New Japan. So what we have here is, we already covered this in a prior video, that there were a couple of buys. The buys were kind of interesting. One of them seems to have worked out, where the rest of them not so much. But the first round of the tournament, we'll just go through some of the matches here. It featured Yota Tsuji versus Evil, which we had a surprise, shocking win there with Evil beating Tsuji, although it wasn't that much of a surprise because Tsuji won the tournament last year. Very often, you know, a big major star will get knocked out in the first round of the tournament. Usually that's Tanahashi in the past, but Tanahashi obviously isn't in the tournament this year. And the winner of this match would go on to face David Finlay, who had a bye in the first round, which led to Evil and Finlay, and we're going to cover that in a moment as we talk about the featured people in this tournament. Yuya Uemura faced SANADA in the first round. SANADA, who's also a member of the War Dogs. That's another story that I want to get to in a second. Uemura does win the match and goes on to face Yoshihashi, who got the bye in the first round. Ryowa, I'm going to have a hard time saying this poor guy's name until I get it right, but he took on Chase Owens. Decent match, good one for Iowa to win. He would go on to face his stablemate and stable leader in TMDK and Zack Sabre Jr., the former IWGP champion, who got a bye in the first round. Gabe Kidd took on Ren Narita and some War Dog, House of Bullet Dog, that's a good one. War Dog, House of Torture action. Gabe Kidd won this one and went on to face Taichi in one of my favorite matches of the tournament. I will get to that in a second. El Phantasmo, the TV champion, fell to the Great O'Khan in the first round. Great O'Khan would then face Shota Umino, who would be making his return after a month off from New Japan, after shaving his head, losing a match to O'Khan. So a lot of intrigue around that one. Tetsuya Naito took on Callum Newman, continuing this kind of senior class, freshman class rivalry that the two of them have had for the last couple of years. Newman, who's coming back from an injury, did well in the match, but you know, it's Tetsuya Naito. Naito did win and went on to face Jeff Cobb, who got a bye in the first round. Jeff Cobb, another interesting story in this tournament. Tomohiro Ishii took on Drilla Maloney. Drilla getting the push in the heavyweight division from New Japan, another one of the War Dogs. He beat Ishii in the first round and would face off against a former rival in the juniors division, in the junior tag division, TJP, who got a bye in the first round. And Boltin Oleg took on Balak Fale, Fale making his yearly trek back to New Japan. And Oleg wins the match. Very cool match of these two big guys going at each other. He would go on to face Shingo Takagi, who got a bye into round two. Now, we're going to cover the rest of this by highlighting, which probably the most important part is the stories, because we are in the story era. So to relate this to a lot of people in the 2025 pro wrestling world, we're going to talk about the stories around this tournament. Now, we're going to rewind and go from the back and up the card. One of the bigger stories in this tournament has been Drilla Maloney and Shingo Takagi. They had a match earlier in the year that was an outstanding match, a breakthrough match for Drilla Maloney. The rematch did happen. Drilla did beat TJP. Takagi beat Oleg. They did meet up in, I believe it was the quarterfinals, and another amazing match between the two of them. I think Drilla has got, even though I prefer his old hairstyle to the new hairstyle, it doesn't really matter. He is coming along as a person to watch. I think he's at Trent Beretta levels right now. Let's see if he can exceed where Trent was at this point in time in his career in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Shingo, of course, one of the GOATs now in New Japan. He established himself as a force in this tournament, obviously, beaten Oleg, beaten Drilla, and he would go on to the semifinals, which we had the other night. In the other bracket, there's another interesting, well, there's a couple interesting stories in the third bracket here. Third bracket, we've got Naito and Jeff Cobb. Cobb has had, and I mentioned it on his channel, I see that the English broadcast team are constantly talking about this stuff. It's been around. The rumors of Jeff Cobb possibly leaving New Japan, possibly going to AEW, maybe going somewhere else. Jeff Cobb has alluded to this and kind of winked and nod about it here and there. They try to downplay it somewhat with him getting the surprise upset win over Tetsuya Naito and going on to the quarterfinals. But I still don't know. The jury's out on it. Again, it's just a rumor. They are addressing the rumor, although when they address rumors like this, it kind of makes me think that Jeff Cobb probably is leaving New Japan pretty soon. But again, who knows? He says no, then he says yes, then he says maybe, then he says no. But it's an interesting story going on there with Jeff Cobb in New Japan and in this tournament. He would face the winner of the match between Shota Umino and the Great Okan. And yes, okay, so we got the rematch after the hair cutting. Umino made his return in a multi-man tag match, preliminary match before this night. And Umino is now dressed in all white, a variation of his old gimmick costume, and his head is shaved bald. He's got a little stubble growing back in there, but his demeanor is completely different. Shota Umino now doesn't come through the crowd. He comes through he's not slapping hands and kissing babies. He's not handing out glow sticks. He's not doing all of that babyface stuff. He is coming to the ring, and he gets in the ring with a hoodie over his head, bows his head in the corner until the match is ready to start. This is a completely different Shota Umino from what we have seen, and I absolutely love this turn for Shota Umino. I think this is exactly what needed to happen. I didn't know what they needed to do. A lot of people, myself included, have said maybe he needs to go to Excursion, maybe he needs to go to Mexico, maybe, this worked for Naito before because he was on that Naito train. He took a month off, came back, and this whole disgraced wrestler thing is probably one of the more interesting stories of this year in wrestling, especially with where New Japan could take this, because that is Umino's character right now. He said he could win. He was going with that old gimmick. A lot of people were against him, said he couldn't win, said he wasn't ready for the main event of the Tokyo Dome. He goes to the Tokyo Dome, has a stinker with Zack Sabre Jr. So all of his naysayers were proven right. He had nowhere else to go, so he's changed his character up. And to some degree, Shota looks a little scary to me. Like there's kind of this mental patient thing. There are some allusions to prior wrestlers too that he reminds me of across the board. The look is Hakushi might come to more Western fans to think about his look now, but I personally think he looks, because of the all white and the way he just has this kind of psychotic look on his face. It's like you're almost waiting for him to snap, and that's what you look at. But his matches are a lot better now. And his match against the Great Okan was pretty damn good. His match against Jeff Cobb was pretty damn good. And then he would go on, after beating Jeff Cobb, to face Shingo Takagi in probably Shota Umino's best match I've seen from him, I would say probably this year, at least in the last 12 months. Complete night and day from the Wrestle Kingdom thing. Shota Umino, they may have figured him out. It's still too early, and I think the character is still in its embryonic phase of figuring out how he's going to look, how he's going to act. But so far, I think this is a brilliant turn from them and something that has a lot of potential in the future. Shota Umino might go from the guy who's like, he doesn't belong in the main event, and he might actually wind up, stranger things have happened. I think this gimmick, if they play it right, he might wind up being the most popular or the biggest star in New Japan, after being the guy that we were all like, he shouldn't be there, he doesn't deserve to be there. But time will tell. Early on with this gimmick, this new gimmick, I like it. I like what I see from it. It's very unnerving, and I just want to see where they go. Going up to the second bracket here, we had, of course, Zack Sabre Jr. met Oiwa. It was a teacher-student moment. Oiwa, you know, he's one of the best characters they've got in the young group division. He's not quite in that big three yet, but he did a really great job here wrestling, counter wrestling with Zack Sabre Jr. He's going to learn that stuff being in Zack's camp. It was a good match. Zack, of course, wins and goes on to the semifinals, which then left Taichi against Gabe Kidd. One of my favorite matches of the tournament. Taichi and Gabe Kidd, and there's a story around it because you've got the whole House of Torture thing around this with their feud with the War Dogs, right? So the House of Torture do interject themselves in this match with Gabe Kidd and Taichi and lead to a ongoing trope that will go on for the rest of this tour. I think it's leading to a certain particular match. We'll see in a couple weeks if that's true or not. But Gabe loses many matches, multi-man tag matches in this tour by countout. He lost this match to Taichi by countout after the House of Torture basically sat, of course, you know, the referee's down, tight, you know, Marty Asami and Red Shoes get knocked around all the time. So the House of Torture basically clobbers Gabe Kidd in the head. He can't answer the bell. He can't get back in the ring. There's a 20 count outside. Taichi is literally yelling at Gabe Kidd to get back in the ring. Taichi wins the match by countout, advances on to the quarterfinals. But he doesn't look like he's not happy at all. He's slamming the mat. He's yelling at Gabe, get up, get up, get up. Now, I took this in two ways. Part of me kind of thought, is this Taichi acknowledging Gabe Kidd's Tokon spirit, that he is the young wrestler right now that embodies the spirit of New Japan more than anything else? I don't think it's quite that. I kind of thought that at first, that he was yelling at Gabe to get up. Gabe, you have to get up because you're representing us. I think what probably is more likely the story, and what is the story, is that Taichi did not want to lose this match by countout. Taichi knew that most people thought he couldn't beat someone like Gabe Kidd. And if Taichi was going to beat Gabe Kidd, Taichi, who hasn't won a match in God knows how long, if he was going to beat somebody of the caliber of Gabe Kidd and deserve this bye he got into this tournament, he wanted to beat Gabe Kidd legitimate. This is a different Taichi than what we saw 7 years ago, back when I used to call him Birdface all the time, and he just didn't care about winning. He was basically the House of Torture then. But now he's mad, and he's pounding the mat, and he's upset, and he's distraught, and then after the match, he doesn't even know if he belongs in the tournament, which is a bad thing for him. Because of this, he is now going to face in the quarterfinals Zack Sabre Jr., his former World Tag Team Championship partner, Zack Sabre Jr., former IWGP World Champion, in the first ever meeting in New Japan of these two guys. After the Dangerous Tekkers tag team split up and Suzuki-gun dissipated, Zack and Taichi one-on-one in the quarterfinals. So we got set up for that. And in the first bracket, it came down to Yoshihashi and Uemura. Uemura is still getting that hero's push. They're handling him very well. The match for Yoshihashi, it was a solid wrestling match, and that's what I'm seeing more out of Uemura than anything else. Is he's just a solid wrestler. His fundamentals are just very good. Worked on the body part in this match. Really went after Yoshihashi's limbs and got the win over Yoshihashi and got the respect from Yoshihashi, advancing on to the quarterfinals to face the winner of probably one of the most anticipated matches of the tournament, David Finlay and Evil, the Bullet Club leaders, the War Dogs leader, the House of Torture leader. After David Finlay, has kind of stayed out of this whole feud, but Evil made sure he was in it. It doesn't seem like Finlay really wants to be in this feud, shoot-wise. I don't think he wants this storyline. But he got into it with Evil. This match was just basically a fight between the House of Torture and the War Dogs, all across, which has been the whole tour with these two factions, or two sub-factions within a faction. They fought all over the place. There's people everywhere. Stuff's getting wrecked. People are getting thrown into... The audience is in danger. People are literally getting knocked over. The audience is getting knocked over by these guys fighting. It's a little much. You want to have some accident insurance going to a New Japan show with these two teams going out there. They are literally fighting in the entire crowd, knocking people over, pushing people out the way. Nothing new for New Japan, but this is getting out of control right now. David Finlay, once again, the count out. There's so many count outs in this tour. David Finlay wins the match by count out, by sneaking into the ring just in enough time to win the match. And he doesn't definitively get a win over Evil. And the House of Torture and War Dogs thing is going to go on. Now, another thing to be said about this House of Torture War Dogs feud is somehow Chase Owens and Bad Luck Fale have now been incorporated into the War Dogs. But David Finlay is not the one who invited them in. SANADA invited them in, which brings me back to SANADA, probably, along with Shota Umino, the most interesting character in this tournament, even though, yes, I said earlier, he lost in the first round, but he showed up for this match with Evil and Finlay, botched the run-in, which he did late, kicked Finlay, hit Goto by accident because Evil got out the way. Finlay still wins the match, but after the match, he's looking at SANADA, who's in the aisle, who's just kind of looking, and you don't know if SANADA has joined the House of Torture. You don't know if he's turning on the War Dogs. You don't know if he's just sloppy. You don't know what's going on with SANADA. And every night of the tournament and all the multi-man tag matches, he's doing the same thing. The House of Torture is brawling with the War Dogs, and SANADA's just kind of hanging out on the side, not kind of, sort of, really getting into it. And then every once in a while, he'll do something. He hit a good nut shot the other day. And David Finlay had that approval, but they've been going back and forth. It's like SANADA, who just got into the War Dogs, that was what, November? And, you know, even Finlay said, already? You know, I don't know what's going on with SANADA. And he, again, another character, much like Shota Umino, who, you know, went on this really dry babyface run. That didn't work, but now they're the most interesting characters on the show. So where this goes with SANADA, I don't know. They've done a good job with it. I really am enjoying that. So we finally get to the semifinals. It's Zack Sabre Jr. against David Finlay in one semifinal, and Shota Umino against Shingo Takagi in the other semifinal. Shota, like I said before, had the match, his best match I've seen from him, and I would say in the last 12 months against Shingo Takagi. Definitely recommended. This seems to be the Shota we're going to get from here on forward. And if this is the Shota Umino we're getting, yeah, I think this might work. They might have figured it out with him. Fantastic match. After losing the match, and Shingo legitimately in this match threw everything at Shota Umino in a month where, you know, if you've watched AEW Revolution and you watched CM Punk and Seth Rollins on the Raw Netflix, we have had a couple weeks now where we have seen people have the literal kitchen sink thrown. Well, not literal, but we've seen guys just get obliterated and kick out. I mean, it's getting almost to a ridiculous point, and New Japan was not left out. Shota Umino ate so many pumping bombers, made in Japans, Shingo superplexed him, dropped him on his head, new moves. No matter what he did, he could not put down Shota Umino. Shota finally wins the match almost 25 minutes in, and a definitive win. And after the match, Shingo's a little salty. He's kind of waving. He's like, nah, screw you. He's like throwing shirts at Umino, who's in the ring. He's waving him off and cursing at him and everything else. And it's like, okay. And Shota, who's, again, just looks like he's like lost his mind, has his dad raise his hand. He's going into the finals. Zack Sabre Jr. and David Finlay have an all-timer. They'll both for these guys now, given where they are with their characters, fit. This looked like a big-time foreigner match in New Japan, which has been a long time since a foreigner-on-foreigner match from current roster New Japan guys felt like a big deal. This felt like a big deal. And I think it's only helped by the fact that Zack is the current former IWGP champion, and David Finlay has been in this role as the leader of the War Dogs for a long time now, and he's fit. And like I said this last summer during the G1, it felt like then he finally felt comfortable. For me as a viewer, I feel that when I watch him now, he fits the character that they wanted for him. And I said this a long time ago when they first started with him, and people have been poo-pooing David Finlay. It's like, it was the same thing with Jay White, and it was the same thing with Kenny Omega. And actually, to some extent, it was the same thing with AJ Styles, who was coming in from TNA at the time, and nobody thought he could, can he hang in New Japan? Is he going to be, that was a new thing back then. Most of the leaders of Bullet Club, and I guess you could say it with Fergal Devitt too, because he was a junior. Most of the leaders of Bullet Club, at the beginning, you're like, I don't know if that guy can lead a faction. Like, And every single time, from Fergal to AJ to Kenny, who people thought was a comedy wrestler. Then he became obviously he's a pro wrestling god now. Jay White, people thought he was too young, too early, too much, too fast. He's matured into one of the best wrestlers, and I think Finlay has entered that phase now with his character, where he's matured into the character, and it feels like he's wrestling some of the best matches that I've seen from him in the last year too. And this one with Zack Sabre Jr. was great. He wins. The finals are Finlay and Shota Umino. How ironic that we've come back to the two of them. Finlay, who's been cheered and booed throughout this tournament. Shota, who's been cheered and booed throughout this tournament. Two tweener characters meeting in the finals. Finlay at the last night after Shota wins the finals. Shota's done this thing where he doesn't do the post-match commentary. He grabs a mic and just drops in and walks out the ring. He doesn't do the post-match interview, promo. So he does that on this night. Finlay and Goto come to the ring. Goto calls him out. He's like, where are you going? Get back out here. You're going to face David Finlay, the Rebel, yada, yada, yada. Shota comes back out. There's this great shot of him. There's two great shots of Shota on this night. I'm going to mention the other one. I'm going to see if I can find it too. But there's this shot of Shota. He's standing in the entranceway listening to Goto run him down, listening to Finlay run him down. He gets in the ring, says, I'm going to beat you and win the New Japan Cup, and walks out. I'm telling you right now, I'm actually kind of excited for this finals because I like the fact, again, Finlay has grown into his character. Shota, this new version of him, a lot of potential, a lot of upside potential to it. I do feel like this roster's finally coming together. It's still got a ways to go, but I like it. And SANADA, what's he doing? What's going on with him? Is Jeff Cobb leaving? Naito's got issues over here. And now we come to the finals of the New Japan Cup 2025, starting off with a mystery opponent, ELP, El Phantasmo, defending the New Japan World Television Championship against who knows. And then United Empire's music comes on, and there's all this mystery. This actually looked pretty cool while watching it as the opening scene, and all the lights are going off, and then you see a hand come through the curtain. Oh, you think it's the Great Okan because that's how he comes out, but then it also could be TJP as Osmo. You know, there's all these mystery about who it's going to be. So then both Okan and TJP come through the curtain. I'm like, this is interesting. Way to start off the show. So who is it going to be, a triple threat match? Which one of them is going to challenge? And then Okan gets up on the apron, and then he goes to go into the ring, but then he's just holding the ropes open for TJP, who is the one who's actually challenging. So they played a lot of mystery with who it is. This is very unique. I can't recall seeing anything quite like this before, making it a question of on the way to the ring of who was going to be it. I haven't seen that a lot. But of course, you know what this means. It is ELP versus TJP. And I would love to rhyme that, but I'm not going to be that cheesy. So this match was cool. I enjoyed the dynamic between these two wrestlers is very good. I can't recall, probably since Best of the Super Juniors, maybe was the last time I saw an ELP TJP match. This has a completely different vibe to it because the whole thing is TJP thinks he's the captain of the United Empire in absence of Will Ospreay. But is he quite filling that role? A lot of people would say no. He's got he could. He's definitely got the kind of look and the style for that kind of a role as a leader of a faction, but he's lost a lot of matches. And in this one, it looked like he was going to win at one point in time. Now, this is something really interesting. It looks like El Phantasmo gets a stinger, and then it's a little bit worse, and he can't move his arm, and I believe it was his right arm, and TJP doesn't go after it at first. It looks like it's a legitimate injury the way El Phantasmo is selling this. And I would say right now, it's like I have to look up the medical report if one has come out after I've finished watching the show, but because I'm recording this as I'm watching it between matches. But if he's actually injured, it's sad again because he just overcame cancer. But that would be really sad if ELP was actually hurt legitimately, or if this was selling, which, there's some things that happen later on that make you think it might have been just excellent selling from him. It is one of the best sell jobs ever, or maybe somewhere in between. I'll find out before the end of this. But I thought this was a great turn of events, and then TJP slowly starts working away at that arm, and it gets worse, and it gets a little hard to watch because ELP really looks like he cannot move this arm. And he manages somehow, some way to win the match against TJP. Now, during the course of the match, he was throwing a little shade at the great Okan, who was on commentary at ringside. TJP kind of gives a nod to Okan as they're celebrating, ELP celebrating winning the match, and Okan comes in and attacks El Phantasmo, dropping him with two basic pile drivers, basically a pile driver twice, on that bad shoulder, that bad arm that he's dragging around and he can't move. And it's kind of, and I think Walker Stewart said a good thing. He's like, it's kind of tough to watch because ELP's going back to the dressing room, and it looks like somebody who's like in so much pain that he's out here in this public space and he's got to go back to the dressing room and he's in extreme pain because he's just flopping around all over the place. So again, either he's actually legitimately injured or this was a magnificent piece of selling, but that's how your first match ended at the beginning of the New Japan Cup. So I guess we're going to be in for an interesting night. Then there's Satoshi Kojima against Hiroshi Tanahashi on the Tanahashi retirement tour, his last year in the business. Him and John Cena, parallels to the end. I will give a lot of praise to the English commentary team, who did go into Kojima's history and his time in the same peak as Tanahashi was in his peak, coming into his peak, and that whole era before this current golden era, like right before it. And you tend to forget because Kojima's been one of the New Japan dads for so long. At this point in time, you forget that this dude was a fairly controversial character in his career, having both the New Japan Championship and the Triple Crown Championship at the same time. That never had happened before. He was like the bad boy between the two companies. He's the only person that's ever won the G1 that actually at the time was not a New Japan contracted wrestler. So Kojima's got some spiciness to his history, obviously, and you saw that kind of brought back into play in this match against Tanahashi, who was the one that stayed in New Japan, and at the time he became the golden boy. He was the savior of New Japan in so many ways, and that's kind of the same dynamic they have in this match. Although the crowd is a little bit more for Kojima on this night because, sometimes the Japanese fans like to troll a little bit sometimes too. It's like, Tanahashi, it's your retirement time, but it'd be kind of cool if since we know you're going to win, it'd be kind of cool if Kojima got the win. We're going to cheer for him a little bit. Kojima didn't get the win, by the way. Tanahashi actually looked decent in this match, as in he didn't have some of the unfortunate moments where he couldn't get over the top rope in a couple matches over the last few months. He looked solid. He hit all those moves. He took all the bumps. He did the high fly flow. He did all of his good stuff, and it looked crisp and it looked good. A little slower again, of course, but Tanahashi picking up the win after the high fly flow, and the legend continues. And I'm still hoping that Okada comes back, because we got to have one more Okada Tanahashi match, man. Gotta have one more, but we'll see what happens. I'm wondering if that's coming up for Forbidden Door or something like that. Now here's a part of the card where the factions, there's a lot of faction stuff going on tonight, and we're seeing factions that are filled with some heels and faces within the same faction. It's getting kind of complicated, but it's also intriguing. You kind of don't know where anything is going and who's where. There's the lines between who's the face and who's the heel are getting very blurred in New Japan. So just whatever, guys. They're in remains of them are in a 6-man tag against technically the War Dogs, SANADA, Bad Luck Fale, and Chase Owens. Don't ask me. SANADA, who's played this whole tournament, this whole tour, in this kind of nonchalant manner when it concerns David Finlay, has a lot of people questioning, and then Fale and Chase just came out of nowhere to become the War Dogs just for no reason whatsoever, just because they had to pick a side in the Bullet Club war, I guess. Because they had always been kind of Bullet Club neutral, those guys, along with Ishimori. So you got those guys siding with the War Dogs here, and this isn't in a match against the House of Torture. It's a match against SANADA's old enemies, Fun spots in this match. The main point of this match, though, was for what happened in the post-match. After Bullet Club gets a decisive win, with Chase Owens coming down to him and Taka Michinoku. By the way, Taka Michinoku looks and wrestles like an anime character. He is like a walking, talking anime character in that ring. But Chase brutalizes him with the package pile driver to get the win. After the match, there's a brutal attack on just 3 guys, 4 guys, however many there are. SANADA then is into this one, though. Like, when it comes to the House of Torture stuff, he's not all that interested. But now this is his former faction, so he is excited that Finlay and Chase are putting the beat down on his old guys, and Taichi and Taka, and most of all, Uemura. And SANADA goes to go get the guitar from ringside. He's about to crack poor Uemura over the head with the guitar, but then out of nowhere comes Hontai. It's Tanahashi, it's Ishii, it's Yoshihashi. They're all running to the ring. El Desperado, they're all there, and they're backing up just whatever guys and fight off SANADA and the heel part of the War Dogs. Again, very confusing whether the War Dogs are a heel or face faction. But even more confusing here is that you have just 4 guys who kind of were heel-ish. They leaned more that side, and then SANADA was champion, and then they were kind of faces. But again, that was the gimmick, is that they weren't really heels or faces. They were just 4 guys. But that seems to have ended, as Hontai has now basically absorbed just 4 guys. Tanahashi extending the hand of friendship, and it is taken up by Uemura, and then we have this really wonderful exchange of some old rivalries kind of ending in this big kind of partnership. I mean, this is the kind of union that Putin and Zelensky wish that they could have right now, or I should say Trump wishes that they would have right now. But we didn't get it there, but we're getting it here. We're getting it here. Hontai. Just 4 guys shaking hands. You got freaking Taichi. I can never use that word I used to call him, that phrase I used to call him anymore. Taichi is now full on a face, supposedly. He's in Hontai. A completely face Taichi. That I have got to see what that's going to look like. He's reuniting with El Desperado, both former members of Suzuki Goon. So it's like they're on the same team again. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like in professional sports teams when guys leave different teams and then they wind up on the same team again years later. It's kind of the same thing here with the factions in New Japan. The funniest one is seeing Ishii, who spent most of the time while everybody's shaking hands in the corner with his arms crossed, and then eventually he does come over and he gets face to face with Taichi. Those guys have had a lot of battles over the years, and he sticks out his hand and shakes Taichi's hand. That's really, really cool. Taka Michinoku even got a handshake from Tanahashi. Taka Michinoku in Hontai, full on face. It's interesting. I don't know where this is going, but it's mixing it up. Whether or not it pays off, that's down the road, but this could be really, it feels like one of those things like this could be really cool, or it could just wind up fizzling out eventually. So we'll see how that goes. We weren't done with the 6-man tag match. The next one, of course, one of the most popular wrestlers right now in New Japan Pro Wrestling, Gabe Kidd, war ready, along with another up-and-coming rising star very quickly, especially after his performance in the New Japan Cup, Drilla Maloney, along with Taiji Ishimori, who, like I said, who's now a de facto member of the War Dogs. They're taking on the current Never Openweight champions, Never Openweight 6-man tag team champions in a non-title match, but it is the House of Torture, and this is a typical House of Torture match. Now, again, like I said before, this tournament and this tour has been played with countouts. The House of Torture getting BS countout victories, mainly over Gabe Kidd. They finally overcame that in this match, and amazing teamwork between Taiji Ishimori, Drilla Maloney, and Gabe Kidd. A 6-man that you wouldn't naturally expect. But again, it's like Ishimori has to be there because they have to have 3 guys. And Clark Connors is, I believe he's still in the States, I think, at this point. He's just not on this tour. You would have thought that this would have been Clark Connors, and for whatever reason, somebody didn't think ahead on that, so I don't know. This was pretty easy for them to topple Yujiro and Sho in this group. They weren't much of competition for this team. Drilla looking crazy. The Drilla killer in the end to get the pinfall, and then he gets on a microphone. His mic skills are getting a lot better too. He got on a microphone and basically said, yeah, you guys think you can kick the War Dogs out of the Bullet Club? It's impossible because War Dogs are a Bullet Club, which I tend to agree with. The War Dogs are more in the spirit of what Bullet Club is supposed to be than the House of Torture, which is not even, there's nothing Bullet Club about House of Torture. So, except for the fact that Evil says that Bullet Club's supposed to be against New Japan, but I think we've transcended that. It really is it's mainly supposed to be a foreigner heel stable. And you have a non-foreigner heel offshoot of that's claiming the name but isn't. So anyway, again, a rivalry that is very complicated. I think on the scale of factions, like, the House of Torture is at the bottom of the heel faction. Slightly above them were the War Dogs, and slightly above them were like just 4 guys, and slightly above them was Los Ingobernables and Chaos, then, which no longer exists because they also absorbed Hontai. So Tanahashi, I will note this by now, Tanahashi, as president of New Japan, has absorbed Chaos into his faction Hontai, and now absorbed just 4 guys into, power plays by the new president. Something that seems to be common in the world today. New presidents making a lot of power plays to shape things in a way in which they want to see them. So Tanahashi following suit with that. You run the risk of Hontai being like too many people though. But hey, whatever. We'll see. I don't think that's going to last long. It could lead to a civil war amongst Hontai down the road. We also had a fun 6-man match to break off the Hontai thing for a minute with Los Ingobernables de Japón, with Tetsuya Naito and Hiromu Takahashi, the tag champions, teaming up with Bushi to take on Jacob Austin Young, Callum Newman, and the is he here, is he not here, Jeff Cobb. And it does look like, I guess they're going to be keeping Cobb for a while because him and Newman apparently are going to be trying to challenge Hiromu and Tetsuya Naito for the tag team titles. Naito is, I believe, every match, his pre-match strip routine is getting longer and longer. The older and older he's getting into his career. Hiromu, clowning around and trying to act and see if he's a big, tough, strong guy like Jeff Cobb, and they're goofing off a little bit in LIJ. Meanwhile, Callum looks to be taking things very seriously against Tetsuya Naito. Again, they still have that, even though he's lost all these matches, including a week ago in the New Japan Cup. Callum Newman is still seeing Naito as his rivalry. It's like a rivalry between two baseball teams, but one team has beaten the other team 21 games to 1. It's not really much of a rivalry except to the team that got the 1 win, and Callum hasn't even gotten that yet. But I think that's where we're focusing in the future with this. Jacob Austin Young, I like it. They're talking this year about there being a junior Sakura Genesis show with the main Sakura Genesis show, and they also announced this night, as I mentioned, about the whereabouts of and where is Clark Connors. Well, he has been announced that he and El Desperado will be facing each other for the Juniors Championship in a hardcore match at the Junior Sakura Genesis show. Jacob Austin Young will probably be on that show as well, but they're definitely hinting at him having a big role this year, possibly in the Best of the Super Juniors. Of course, we're rapidly approaching that time of the year already. It's kind of crazy how fast the year goes. But LIJ wins this match. Again, I'll say this. I think Evil, for what he's supposed to... You can look at it this way. Evil, his name is Evil. And his faction's called the House of Torture. They are the worst, most faction, to the point you could say it's almost evil at the way they abuse the heel roles in wrestling, in particular a company like New Japan, and in a culture, a wrestling culture like Japanese wrestling culture. So I guess to that extent, he fulfills his name of being evil. I still hate his matches though, but this one did keep my interest because Evil was trying to, and Kanemaru were trying to really go after, obviously, the global heavyweight champion, Yota Tsuji. Tsuji with backup, so Shingo was backup. That wasn't going to happen too easily. In fact, Yota Tsuji kind of outsmarted House of Torture for all the usual garbage they do and got the win. Evil tried to attack him after the match. They were mildly successful, but Evil tried to make off with the global championship. He's trying to claim himself now as the global champion. And this is what Evil does. He claims he's just pissing off everybody. He's claiming to be this champion. He's claiming to be the president. He's claiming to be the leader of Bullet Club. Every faction and everybody in New Japan hates him. And again, like I said, I guess he's living up to his name. I would much rather prefer Yota Tsuji go into his next program against somebody else. And I'll talk about that as we bring this next match up, which is back to Hontai. We do have more members of Hontai on this card. Tanahashi's influence. El Desperado, who again, still baffles me how he's a member of Hontai, teaming up with Bolton Oleg and the IWGP World Champion Hirooki Goto to take on Hartley Jackson, Oiwa, and ZSJ of TMDK. And this is where I think I would have rather seen Zack Sabre Jr. be the next challenger for Yota Tsuji because of the simple fact that Zack really seems to be lost right now. He doesn't really have anything going on, and that is a worry for me, him coming off of, his world title run, that he would need something kind of upper level to kind of keep the momentum going. He's not winning the New Japan Cup. I can't see anything major for him at Sakura Genesis, but there's plenty of matches I would love to see Zack in. Again, like I said, I would love to see him right now at some point have a go at Yota Tsuji for that global championship, and I'm dying to see Zack Sabre Jr. and Konosuke Takeshita at some point in time. But it looks like they're trying to throw other people at Takeshita right now from the New Japan roster. For the Never Championship. So there's a lot going on right now, but this match didn't really move anything forward. There's some funny spots with Desperado trying to be a face and do the Hontai little drum thing that he didn't want to do. Despy, of course, had just come from a hardcore match, and they made sure we all saw it, his back all scarred up and bruised up and cut up from a hardcore match he just had. So, that's Despy though, man. Desperado, a unique character in of himself. Hontai gets the win, but Goto stays around afterwards because he wants to see the main event, which is the finals of the New Japan Cup. Shota Umino, David Finlay, two very, very different characters who've come very, very far from what they were only a few years ago. And again, they do this brilliant shot of Umino with his head bowed in the corner. He showed a little bit more fire on this night. It's like he's roaring like the lion of New Japan. I guess that's the implication. A couple times on this main event spot, which I will say again, this match is pretty damn good. David Finlay, like I said, as of last G1, I think he's filled into his position and his spot. He feels like he belongs there now to me. And this was a damn good match between the two of them. A lot of really close calls. They have a chemistry that's developing. It could be one of the better ones over the next couple of years in New Japan, as long as both of them stay in the company and are healthy. I do recommend seeing this match, and if for nothing but it is one point later in the match, with Finlay's going for a spear from one corner to Shota in the other corner, and Shota's running at him as Finlay's coming at him with the spear, and they perfectly time Shota's jumping knee with Finlay going into the spear, and you see Finlay's head bounce off of Shota's knee. It looked nasty. The crowd gasped. Then Shota, if that wasn't enough, obliterated him with a clothesline for a near fall. That was probably the coolest thing. That's probably the coolest spot in that match. But the match had a lot of cool spots. But that is definitely something. If you haven't seen this match, you got to watch it just for that spot. In the end, Finlay did get the win. It took a lot to put down this new version of Shota Umino. And then I've seen something that I don't think, again, I've ever seen in wrestling before. And this is this new topsy-turvy, bizarro world of New Japan and its factions and its matchups and its heroes. So after the match, Shota takes forever to get up off the mat. Finlay kind of picks him up, and he's like, I ain't got time for this. Get up on the ropes. This is after Finlay has snatched the crown for the New Japan Cup from the vice president of the company because he was taking too long to hand it to him. So Finlay doesn't have time to mess around here. He wants to go back in the back and party with the War Dogs. So he sets Shota up on the ropes, and tells Shota, he's like, look, if you wanted this, you want success like I have, there's only one right way, my way. You got to do it my way. And Shota kind of nodded and then got out the ring. And I'm like, and the commentators, both Japanese and English, were like, whoa. Well, it's like, this is probably the first time I've seen a heel in a honorable win impart wisdom in towards the dark side to somebody who's struggling to be a face and is kind of a tweener right now. I've never really seen this kind of ending. Usually, when heel versus heel matches, it's kind of one, they don't really have that moment at the end. And Shota, to a lot of fans, is kind of a heel in the business. I think he's a tweener, but it looks like they're trying to push him towards that darker route, especially with him nodding after Finlay said, you want to do this, you got to be like me. I don't know what that's going to look like. However, I do think the last thing Shota Umino needs to hear is he needs to be like another wrestler again. He needs to just be like himself. But I do think what Finlay meant is you have to just not care and focus, which we have seen from Shota in this tournament. So I'm going to give Shota Umino, who's like him and Gabe Kidd right now are the two hottest, and SANADA are the three hottest topics in New Japan. I don't know where this new gimmick is going. I like what I see so far. It could go somewhere, so I'm going to give it some time and see how it evolves. I think it's a very organic thing, and I think they're just going with it as it comes along, and Shota's trying to come up with new stuff. But, if he keeps something of this persona going and can expand upon it, and at the same time wrestle the kind of matches he wrestled here with Finlay, and in the semis with Shingo Takagi, I think Shota Umino is going to be just fine in the future as far as a star in New Japan. I think this might be what fixes what was wrong with his perception amongst the fans. But it's going to still take a lot of time for all of the fans to kind of accept whatever character he comes up with. Meanwhile, David Finlay, a guy who's gone through the exact same thing, like I said, filled into his role as the leader of Bullet Club. He's celebrating. Of course, this now means he's going to take on Hirooki Goto. I did mention that before. This would be an interesting revenge match. Probably the better setup because Goto lost a match to Finlay last year for Finlay's global championship at the time, and Finlay did it and embarrassed Goto in front of his actual real life little kids and made his daughter cry, like legitimately, I was a bit uncomfortable with that whole angle, and Goto never got his revenge. This is like about 6, 7, 8 months ago. Goto, I was like, I guess Goto's not going to get his revenge on this, and now here we are coming full circle. Goto's the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. Finlay is the guy that has embarrassed him more than probably anybody in a long time, if ever, in New Japan Pro Wrestling has embarrassed Hirooki Goto this way. And Goto's going to come back and got to do this not only for his own pride, not only to retain the championship, but to kind of put a better light on that debacle and an embarrassment in front of his real-life children, crying real-life tears. Hopefully we can have a good, happy moment come out of this match. However, I am suspecting that I would not be surprised if David Finlay winds up winning at Sakura Genesis and becomes an IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. That championship might move around maybe 2 or 3 times a year for the next couple of years. We kind of long for those long runs. We got spoiled with Okada. We got spoiled with, even some of the other wrestlers had longer runs. Not Naito, but we got spoiled by some world champions who had long runs. But I think we can probably, as long as it doesn't become a hot potato, I'm not upset if they change the IWGP champion 2 times this year. I think 3 would be stretching it, but I would keep an eye out to see whether or not Finlay is going to win the IWGP World Champion. Again, it wouldn't surprise me, given that New Japan is right now it's just, like I said, a bizarro land. I don't know. You got faces and heels and the same factions fighting other factions, and Hontai is just sucking up all the little pieces, all the little tiny broken factions. They're just sucking them all up into Hontai. So, I guess we'll have to see where all of this leads to. But I want to know what you guys think. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Did you enjoy the New Japan Cup tournament, including the finals? Where do you think some of these things are going? Do you think El Phantasmo is actually hurt? Do you think Finlay could possibly become the new IWGP champion? And what is Gabe Kidd and Yota Tsuji as the new leaders of the new school? Are they having some guys like Shota Umino with the new gimmick showing up, and Oiwa, who's eventually going to try to get there? What do you think is going on with SANADA And the War Dogs, what's happening with that? A lot of questions in New Japan right now. It is actually fairly interesting, and hopefully they continue it and they can kind of bring some of their fan base back, because they are really struggling. Well, I wouldn't say struggling, but they're not filling as many seats as they used to, but I feel like the product is still really good. It just needs refinement. And I see a lot of things that could be very interesting for the next couple of years in New Japan. But again, you guys let me know in the comment section. Until next time, I will see you guys here for more news, rumors, and reviews on Rant and Review Pro Wrestling. Have a good day.